Hello, everybody. Have I got a story for you today? I'll tell you, it's a over 100-year-old story, and I'm just gonna start with this series on Governor Catzarkatz. So I hope you follow along with this series as I go. I still have some research to do. You can see this is one of the books I'm doing some of the research out of. So the history of Pensacola, there's a lot of history about Pensacola right here in this book. But this isn't the book I'm going to be citing today. I am going to be citing this book today. Now it's a little bit messed up. I got some water on it. It's got some mold on the back. It's pretty rough and beat up, but this is the book I'm going to be referencing today. It's 100 Years of Ministry from 1917 to 2017, and I'm going to skip a lot in the middle because really, to me, it's the beginning that matters, and then the part where I kind of joined in, and because obviously I wasn't around in 1917. So Pensacola First Assembly of God in Pensacola, Florida. All right, here we go. It starts out in 1917, and they were meeting in someone's house. All right. There's no copyright page, so should be good here. It's kind of falling apart here. All right. Here we go. This is the first. In 1917, they were meeting in a house. They had a worship building at F and LaRua Street. Let me see here. And this is the first pastor there, the founding pastor, Reverend Martin. Okay. So here we go. Their children were Mrs. Lacey Martin Simmons and Miss Margaret Martin Barks, and they grew up in the church. All right. So there you have it. Then sometime in 1921 to 22, they worshipped at 12th and Salamanca Streets, and then they moved into an old streetcar barn at the corner of DeVillers and Gadsden, not too far from here in my office. So now on this old streetcar barn, it's my guess that at some point this streetcar barn would have been some type of city property or managed by the city, and so they were letting the church worship there, and that is when Governor Catzarkatz rolls in the story, and I find it very interesting here, and you can see the spelling there. It's right there. Sidney J. Catzarkatz. Now that's not really his name. His name's actually Sidney J. Katz, C-A-T-T-S. And you can Google him, and he's got a Wikipedia page. He was a Democrat. And yeah. Who are these Democrats today? So I'd like to read you a little about this pastor here. Still, this Martin, Reverend Martin fella. It says, during these early years, the church and the young congregation and pastor suffered severe persecution. On one occasion, Pastor Martin was taken from the pulpit by an angry mob of men and threatened with hanging from a nearby light pole. So reinforcement of policemen were called to rescue him when the congregation was helpless to do so. After several other interferences with the services of the governor of Florida, Sidney J. Catzarkatz was called to Pensacola to settle the trouble. And so that's the story of the governor of Florida visiting Pensacola. Now, this is where the story takes a turn. After this event, because the church started in 1917, and then after this event in 1921 to 22, in that area, they decided to change. It's a home church. It doesn't say that they had a name for the church, but it does say First Assembly had its beginning in 1917, just for prayer meetings. Okay, so that's when they originally say that the church started, but it didn't come into they didn't come to this agreement to join the assemblies until December 18th, 1921, when the pastor called a business meeting. The Assemblies of God came into being not too far back than that in 1914 out of Hot Springs, Arkansas. But here we have in December 18th, 1921, they applied for affiliation with the General Council of the Assemblies of God. And a letter dated January 12th, 1922 is when they were officially recognized as First Assembly of God, part of the General Council of Assemblies of God. All right, then you fast forward, and they are able to get some land. There you have it. They're able to get some land, and they're going to build a new church. And it's the current location of the church today, and that was on the 12th and Bayou Boulevard. And that was the Pastor Barge, Reverend Barge. So that was right in the beginning of the 80s, 1980s. And they built this building. It really is a wonderful building. It is there. There's a lot of other pastors that did teach there. Now here's Pastor Ballinger. I actually knew him. He moved over to and started his own church, I think, called on W and Airport, called Jubilee there. So he started his own non-denominational thing. All right, so this is the time that I entered. This is the pastor as I was going there at about 14 years old, and that's when I originally was introduced to Pensacola First Assembly of God. It was booming. There was lots of people going to church. The youth group was very large, and I was 14 and being a very rebellious teen, not really all that interested in the things of God at the time. I was more interested in, chasing girls and having fun. I mean, that's the reality of it. So that was his tenure was 93 to 97. I won't go into why he left the church, but there was a split in the church, and the youth pastor stepped up to pastorship. Mr. Hale. And so we actually split off with the other church, and that didn't last too long. Then I entered back in as an adult, as a grown man here last year or the year before, just to close a chapter on my life, where, you know, I'd had some things that I was trying to work through and figure out why and all of that. So, yeah, and so Mr. Ballinger, Mr. Scruggs, Pastor Reverend Scruggs, he was the pastor here recently, and now it is currently another guy that's currently the pastor there, a younger gentleman now. This goes on, and it has some stories about, you know, the church. You should be able to go by there and pick one of these up if you're interested in reading the whole book. Some real interesting stories in there, but just wanted to touch on that one from Governor Catzarkatz. So this is the first installment of this story on Governor Catzarkatz. I hope you'll join along with me as I continue to tell this story. It is a doozy, so keep on following with me. This is Stan McDaniels, and I hope to see you next time.